Hello and welcome to Circle Time, the Early Years podcast with me, Glenn Denny. I'm delighted to be joined by Early Years Nursery Director and friend and colleague, the lovely Sarah Hardwell. Sarah, hello.
Hello.
Well, Sarah, I mean, we've worked together for just over a year now.
Yes.
And it's really good to have you in to the podcast. Now, I know there's lots of things that interest you within early years, but one of the main things that you're really interested in is practitioner and parent partnerships.
Yes. Just a little bit of background about myself. I started off as a secondary school teacher, and then I was a primary school teacher, and now I am 100% committed to early years. But I've seen working with parents in lots of different perspectives, and also worked with children in lots of different age groups. And the thing that has become apparent to me over my career is just how important it is to see the child as a whole. And it's not just the hour, if you're a secondary school teacher, or the day, if you're a primary school teacher, that you spend with the child. It's what is going on in their whole life. Mm-hmm. That is the only way to see that child, and the best way to support them, and best way to give them the best start in life, which is why I have become so keen on the early years, because in the early years, you have the time to see the child in that way and to spend time with the child's family. So that, I think, is the key to success for any child.
I think so as well. And I think you've got that unique perspective that, like you say, I mean, as a secondary teacher, you'd have literally just had that hour and then they're gone. They're literally like, as soon as that bell rings, they're out the classroom. I mean, with primary, you've got a little bit of time, but you're still constrained. Yeah. But with early years, you do have more time to spend building partnerships with parents. So I think for you as well, it's a unique perspective, isn't it?
Yeah. And you did see parents, obviously you had parents' evenings as a school teacher, but that would be occasional. Mm-hmm. And not all parents could come or wanted to come. And so you could see the difference in how children's lives were depending on what their family circumstances were. And I think the experience of a child is so affected by everything in their life. You can't hope to have too much effect just as a teacher. I think they often spout the statistic of a child's year is 15% in school if they're in education, which is nothing really. Teachers cannot really make much of an impact because there's just not the time to do that. It's not really our job, but we can help by being part of that. I'm a big fan of the Bronfenbrenner's ecological theory system, where you've got the child at the centre and then everything else in the child's life in concentric circles. You know, obviously the family is most central, but teachers and other people that spend time with the child also have an impact. But the only way to have a successful outcome is for everybody within those circles to work as a community with the child at the centre.
There is that saying, isn't there? It takes a village to raise a child.
That, yeah.
And it is perfectly true. It's like when you were talking about that diagram there with the child at the centre, we've seen it in so many different kind of textbooks and things, having not that long ago completed my degree. It's like definitely one of the things that cropped up. And it is, there's so many adults, if you stop and think about it, that actually come into a child's life that can have an influence.
Yeah, and you can't all pull in different directions. And having been a parent of young children, when I first had a child, I was a secondary school teacher. I really didn't understand the early years. And having had that experience of a parent with a toddler and a baby, and then years later been a parent again with a baby, but spent a lot of time in early years, the difference in understanding of what was going on in that child's life was phenomenal. And obviously there's no manual. Parents just have babies and they always do their best, want to do their best. But to expect them to do their best completely unsupported is just madness. Why not all work together and everyone brings their own little parts to that collective hope that the children are going to end up on the right path?
I mean, there's certainly that bit that, parents rely on us within early years settings to help them with their child. And that's what we are there for, essentially, is to help and support families, not just the child that comes to us. Obviously, the child is very much at the center of what we do, but also the families there as well. And we need to, you'll have had it and I've had it that we've had parents coming to us for advice about this or that or the other. And, we do our best to help and guide them from our own experiences.
But seeing that as a partnership and seeing that as a two-way conversation is by far the most successful way of doing it. You have to understand the perspective that the parent's coming from, how, if they're working 3 jobs, if it's their first child, if it's their third child, if they have a lot of other family members to support them, if they have no one else that's on the scene to be their backup. There's all sorts of different ways that family life runs. And if you listen to them and hear about their life, you can see ways of building that partnership rather than just saying, I'm an early years expert, you need to do this. That's never going to be a way of resolving all the really big things about sleep and speech development. There's so many different massive milestones going on in the early years of life while you're probably sleep deprived and just fitting everything in life a challenge. There's a lot going on.
There really is. I think as well, that's why when children and families come to join us within a setting, it's so important to have that proper, deep settling in time where they get to know the key worker as well. And I think that's another huge element of the whole kind of partnership thing, is that the parent has a focused person that they can go to as well. Yeah, I mean, with most nurseries, we all tend to work together as one team anyway. But it is important for the parents to have that focus, that they've got a named person that they can go and speak to. Definitely.
And building that relationship as the starting point it's quite a nerve-wracking time. You've had your baby, maybe you've had maternity leave or paternity leave where one of you has been at home with the baby, and now you're both heading back to work and you are giving that care of your most precious thing to strangers. It's a really important stepping stone, and building that partnership, early conversations, getting to know each other is crucial so that you feel comfortable leaving your child that place.
It's the trust in there as well, isn't it? I mean, if you don't get that right within the early years setting with the family, then the partnership's not going to be as solid or even there at all.
No. And there will always be, once you've had that initial settling in and there's been lots of conversations and a long time spent with the parents, where we work, we have meetings about every 8 weeks where the parents come in for a chat, and it's a catch up and it's a chat. As a practitioner, you'll have spent a bit of time looking at the child's development and sort of doing the technical stuff, but the parents don't really want to know where they are on birth to 5 matters or development matters. No. They want to know, are they okay?
Are they having fun?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And is everything okay in how they're developing? And even if you say, well, I've noticed this, and maybe if we can all do this together, that will really help. If you've already started to build that relationship, those conversations are easier. And the more often you do those little chats and exchanges, the easier they get. And there may be things that as a practitioner you disagree with. Dummies. I'm not a great fan of dummies because it really affects speech and language development. However, as a parent, you've not had much sleep, baby's screaming. Dummy. Brilliant. But having that conversation about strategies of ways to move on from dummies and perhaps to support the child to be self-soothing without a dummy, there's really difficult things. So having that constant relationship where you can chat about it and gently suggest things and let the parents say, well, actually, what about this? That didn't work. And they are just as welcome to express their opinions because they are the parents, they are the experts in that child. You may be an expert in early years, it's not the same.
No.
It's really important that you are all partners, equals within that conversation, whatever the topic is.
Definitely. I know, like, from our own experience within the setting that we work in, that, using one of my key children as an example, obviously not mentioning names, but I had that really good partnership, that really good bond with the parent and with the family and with the child, that he was having issues with his speech and language. But I was able to actually, within a focus meeting, sit and address that with the family. And they were like, yeah, we've noticed that as well. What can we do? Well, and I was able to, because I'd already prepared for it, but not to say, well, I think it was about the tone of voice, and I think the trust with me as well, that I was able to turn around and say, well, not in a negative way. So, well, your child's really behind. It's like, yes, they are a bit behind, but here's what we can do, and I think there's that kind of knowledge and understanding that we've got, and decanting it and passing it to the parents in a way that they are comfortable with and can understand. Yeah.
I did a research project a few years ago on speech and language development. And one of the first thing I did was to give questionnaires to all of the parents about what they thought about their child's speech and language development, what they understood about speech and language development. And the universal feedback was, well, I'm a bit worried about speech and language. I don't really know what my child should be at. I don't really know how to support my child. And it was at a time when there was a lot of concern about social mobility and the children who were being most left behind because their language development was poor compared to their peers. And there's been a huge amount of work done recently, the Social Mobility Commission, all the new things such as Look, Say, Sing, Play, Hungry Little Minds. It's been huge amounts of ways to support parents, to support their child. But I don't think it should just be about disadvantaged children. I think every parent appreciates a little bit more explanation in a way that they understand of, this is fine, or what you're doing is brilliant, a bit of a confidence boost. That's really tricky. I don't know how to support their speech and language development. Did you have a chat to them while you were walking here? Brilliant. You're doing it.
Yes.
Those small things. Did you talk about the shopping list as you were walking around the shop? Excellent. Did you use the word splash, splash and add in some new words while you're in the bath? That is all developing their speech and language. Just sort of lifting the curtain. It's not mystery what we do. It's not rocket science. We do build rockets, but that's different. Just explaining that all the tiny little interactions in their day, they don't have to sit down and they don't have to find a quiet half hour and they don't have to prepare loads of stuff. That's not what parents need to do. Being there for your child when you can be there, doing little things in your daily life, helping them count the socks while you're sorting out the washing, all sorts of tiny little things. And just saying to the parents, that's brilliant, well done. Did you know that by doing that, you've helped their brain development, you've helped them develop their language, or you've helped them develop their early appreciation of maths? And they go, oh, that's great.
I think as well, I mean, it's kind of listening to what you were saying there as well and giving confidence boost to parents. I think parents as well are under a lot of pressure. I mean, there's a lot of talk about, the picture perfect mum, Instagram ready and all this kind of stuff, and social media having a huge impact on everybody's lives. And I think parents are actually feeling a lot of that as well. And I think that's where we come in and say, actually, it's all right. You are doing a good job. And I think just even saying that, it's that kind of confidence that we give to parents that make them feel confident that they're actually doing all right.
I mean, you have some parents who struggle. They've got, money worries, they're working 2 different jobs, whatever the issues, that puts pressure on their life and they worry that they're not being a good enough parent. Endlessly see parents in stressful situations who are still putting the interests of their child first and being a good parent. But then you have parents who also not got those pressures, but put pressures on themselves and think, well, I need to be doing this. And, we've been teaching our 2-year-old to count to 20. You don't need to, and here are all the reasons why. And I use building blocks quite often. Here are the things at the bottom of the layer, and then counting to 20 is probably at the top. And here are all the other things that you do to help them understand maths. They can learn to count to 20 in the same way they can learn to say bar, bar, black sheep. Doesn't mean they understand what 20 is.
As well, there's that other thing as well, like you were talking about that, and it's like that horrible term, school readiness. It just makes me cringe. And again, that's added pressure. And that's where, again, we can come in with that partnership. It's like, well, we can explain to you, this is what school readiness is actually about. And I think it's taking some of that pressure off parents that they're maybe putting on themselves or feel like from external sources that they need to be doing.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much, my so-and-so can do this and they were off to school and they were writing their name within. That doesn't matter. I'd much rather have a child who is confident in themselves, can ask for help, ask questions if they want to, and can think for themselves and solve problems. All of those characteristics of effective learning. If we can focus on that, and we can show the parents, here are all the life skills that have built this little person ready to flourish. And they'll be able to withstand. Primary school, it's not great. There's too much curriculum. There's too much stuff to be taught. It really frustrated me as a primary school teacher. I thought that secondary school, what is the point in teaching causes of civil war to a child who can barely read and write? It would be better if they could just do some writing practice. But here I was trying to have to teach them that. And I thought, it must be better in primary school. And it wasn't. There was still so much curriculum content to squeeze in. There wasn't the time to spend with the child. So from early years, all we can do is to give them as much resilience and skills as a person as possible, which is much more important than getting them absolutely disillusioned by writing, by going over and over again to get them to practice to write their name before they even come to school. Yeah.
Because, I mean, as well, it's confusing because, you know, the kind of the way I say it to parents when they say, well, they're not able to write their name. That's fine. I mean, the kind of get out clause I use is, well, we don't teach them to write their name here because it might not be the same method they use at school. What we don't want to do is confuse them. And I know it's a bit of a get out clause, but it's just to take the pressure off parents worrying that they're not doing this thing.
And then I talk about crawling. You know, you're building up the muscles in the shoulders, and then you can build up your arm muscles, and then you can build up your wrist muscles, and then a bit of Play-Doh is far better for building up those finger strengths, ready to hold the pen. And they're having fun and they're playing. And early years is about play. There is going to be more than a decade of school. They don't need to be doing learning in the way that school does when we're in the early years. And getting that message across to parents and explaining that all of the play we do has so much value in so many different ways, to give them the skills and to get them ready, but not school ready as other people think.
Yeah. And I think you're right. I mean, certainly I know when we do our observations on the tablet, like we try and get into the habit of just explaining a little bit to parents what the learning is from that. Like, we don't go in there necessarily with a learning intention, because what do we know before the activity that the child is going to learn from it? We can sit back and watch and then explain to the parents what the learning intention is. And that helps them to understand, actually, yes, we're here, we're making a mess, we're having fun, we're getting covered in mud, we're getting covered in paint, whatever. But this is what the child's actually learning, and this is what it's used for later in life.
And I think when I did go back to this research project, it was finding different ways and tiny little ways to work with parents. So some parents really appreciated photos with a little bit of an explanation. Some parents like to be given a leaflet. I wrote some leaflets about different bits and pieces. Here, take this away. This will help you with this. Other parents, I gave them links to all the different things that were just starting up, like Look, See, Sing, Play and Hungry Little Minds, all sorts of things there. There's just endless resources, which is fantastic for Magpie practitioners to go, this is useful. I'll just share that tiny little nugget. And then others would come in, and we do stay in plays, and we explain to parents, and we just show, look, here's the method behind the madness, but let us worry about that bit. You can just play. And by playing, you are doing so many great things with your child.
I think that's the bit I enjoyed about our stay and plays as well, because I mean, I'd never been in a setting where that was a thing, that never happened. And that's what I enjoyed about it. And certainly it's something I will keep with me within my practice, is the fact that I had that time to talk to parents. Yes, I had all my other children around me playing, but I still had time to just have that conversation whilst I was supervising an activity. And I was able to tell parents. I mean, I remember sitting down for like half an hour at least with I think it was a shaving foam activity. And we were mark making, we were moving, we were squashing, and we were squeezing. And I was just having a chat with parents, and they were like, oh. And it was just that lovely little bit of impromptu partnership that we were just having that conversation, and we were building that close link as well.
I still think there's so much work that we as practitioners can do to share our learning when we don't need to go in detail. You don't need to rate every single activity that you see a child doing against Birth to 5 Matters or Development Matters, and you don't need to explain all the different ages and stages and levels. That's irrelevant. And it's really important that if you are writing up something for parents that you don't just quote from one
of the things. It makes no sense
because it's just gobbledygook.
Mm-hmm.
But explaining all the different ways that we can help children and they help children, there's a huge amount that we can do. I still think as a society, we barely scratch the surface. I don't think early years is particularly understood and the importance of it. There's more being said recently, but I still think it's the appreciation of what happens to brain development and physical development, language development in those early years is so crucial, and parents need to be celebrated for everything they do.
Absolutely.
And I think if you work with the parents, you get so much more out of your professional practice.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you're looking at a community rather than this is my room, this is my children, I think you get a much more enriched experience from that.
Definitely, I think so, because I mean, like I say, yes, we're in our rooms, we're in our small individual teams, but you know, it's that one big team within the whole nursery that, you know, it doesn't matter who's in what room. It's like if you need something done, somebody else can jump in and help you, and it's that support. And that's kind of as well what we do. If we're doing that for each other, then we can easily transfer that to our families as well if they need some help and support as well. Yeah,
it's definitely what you have to build out from the child. And you know, I've seen practitioners in my time get annoyed with the parent because they're insisting they only have 20 minutes sleep and it's not in the best interest of the child. And you get that, but you've got to understand the parent's perspective, and you have that conversation, then you see their lives and what's happening for the child, and you don't feel the same frustrations anymore because you're more understanding, because you're working as a team, you're in that wider community with children. And we are in the early years because we want to do our best for young children, and parents are parents and they want to do the best for their children. We all have the same basic focus. We just have different ways to contribute to it.
I think so as well. I'm thinking back as well, like for something else that we do within our setting, and that was our baby group, the stay and play that we had for our babies. And as well, that wasn't just reaching out to within our own nursery family, that was reaching out into our wider community. And like, because I mean, you were there, I was obviously in my room, and I didn't get to see it as much. But there was definitely that opportunity for people to come together, not just to see what we do, but also to kind of get that support as well. And I think that was important.
I think that's really important. And it's something that, again, stems from my own experience as a parent. Being a new parent is just terrifying and often baffling. And being able to sit in a room with other new parents and say, well, birth was deeply traumatic. Very few circles where you can sit and talk about the ins and outs of what happened during birth. But if you're in a room with other people who have all just gone through it, either as partners or as a person who's given birth, they all probably have other things that they want to air and discuss. And having that time with other parents is really helpful, because bottling up things that have been alarming is never good. And then you move on to, well, I'm really worried about teeth, and I'm really worried about this, and I haven't slept properly for a week. And, you know, there's a lot going on, and being able to come and talk to other parents going through that. If you're isolated, it's a terrible time to be stuck at home and not having anyone to wear that
especially
with.
After the last 2 years as well with the pandemic. I mean, that was hugely isolating. You know, we're definitely, like, particularly in my room at the moment, we're kind of seeing that COVID generation of child that were kind of stuck at home. And that's where we're now able to open up to parents as well.
But it was the same with parents. When we first opened the setting in 2020, which was right
Great
in the
time
middle.
to do it.
Yes, it was. We had some parents who had a baby during the strictest lockdown time and had barely left the house until they were returning to work, and they were bringing their child into the setting. And it was incredibly stressful for them. So having the time where they could come in and speak to us and meet, and we would do extra meetings over Zoom because there was limits on time and number of people in the room, and there was all sorts of COVID restrictions at that point. So yeah, it was really difficult. And then the children coming in had not even seen other children.
No.
And it was, you had to be incredibly careful with time to ease everybody into that. But then when we could suddenly start having parents meet each other and come into the setting properly and see the children in their rooms, it was fantastic. The joy that parents had in being able to finally do that was just brilliant.
I mean, I remember jokingly going, it's like when we were finally able to stop wearing face coverings, literally I couldn't recognise the parents unless they covered half the face over. Yeah. But it was just lovely to actually go, oh, so you're that person's parent, because you'd meet them out in the street, you're like, uh-huh.
But then also for the parents to meet each other as well and say, oh, you're so-and-so's parents. I've heard so much about your child. And to, again, build that community. It's not just a partnership between the practitioner and their key child's family. It's all the families within our nursery, and they make friendships with other parents, and then they have play dates, and that builds, and that sense of community is something that's so important, again, because it takes a village to raise a child.
Absolutely. It's kind of building that support network as well.
Definitely.
It's like, with the baby stay and play, and with actually parents meeting each other, even through our own usual setting stay and plays as well. You actually, like, it was interesting to watch parents starting to talk to each other. And like you say, they would go, oh, you're so-and-so's parent. Yeah. And it was just lovely, that recognition, and just they were having a chance to chat with each other, not necessarily with the children. The children were absolutely fine. They were busy playing. They knew where they were. They were happy and secure within their setting. And it's just lovely to actually, the parents making friends as well.
Yeah. I mean, when you have that interest in common of, we both have a 2-year-old, it's a huge amount that you've got to talk about, even just to sort of share war stories almost.
Absolutely. It really is. Yeah. There's one thing I was going to talk about as well, like, building partnerships that from a practitioner's point of view as well. It does take a bit of courage. And, I think there's, for some team members, it can be quite not quite a trauma, but it's very difficult to push yourself forward to do that.
You can really build it up into something as well. I've got to have this meeting with a parent, and I'm so worried about it. But they see you as an expert, and you might not feel like the expert, but you are in a position that they don't understand because they are not early years practitioners. So I always say, look, they just want to chat. They just want to chat to you. So don't worry. And you're not expected to know all the answers. The numbers of things that parents could ask about child development is endless. And, oh, well, I'm not sure about that, but let me go and ask around. Let me consult the collective, and I'll come back to you once we've all found an answer together. That's fine, that as an approach, but it's honesty. Yes. It's an honest chat is the important thing. And I've not had a single practitioner who's done that and come back and gone, oh, that was all right. But no one ever come back and go, oh, goodness me, I can't even do that again.
That one again. Yes.
It's always fine.
Yes.
But the thought of having to do it it can be a bit.
It just builds up in their mind, doesn't it, to this absolutely horrific car crash of a thing. And actually, it's not, like you say, I've seen some of the team come back and go, oh, okay, they were lovely. Yeah. It's like, what did you expect them to be in your mind?
Go back to the fact that you've all got the child at the centre. That's the main thing. You've all got that same interest, and you all just want to chat about it.
And the thing is, that's it. You're talking about a child that you know, and you know them well. Obviously, you don't know them at home. You don't know them as part of their family, but you know them at nursery. And that's what the parents want to know. What are they like at nursery?
I would always say that to anyone that was feeling nervous and feeling that they want to keep the parents at arm's length because parents can be interfering and can tell them things that they don't want to do, just speak to the parents, just have some chats, have them in for stay and plays or whatever else it is, send a few messages backwards and forwards with some photos, start to build that relationship, because the amount that you get from it is, I was endlessly surprised when I worked as a childminder, having that relationship. You're in a room with children by yourself all day. Building that relationship and that community with parents made all the difference. And having that interaction really enriches your practice.
It really does as well. It's like, I feel as well like the families that come to us, that I've got a really good working professional relationship with them, that we can actually stand around and have good a good chat about this, that, and the other. Not necessarily just about the child, but just about the day in general and things like that. And that shows it, to me anyway, it feels like we've built that really good relationship, you know, professional relationship that they can do that. And they feel confident and comfortable talking to you.
Yeah. And, you know, all the things, you know, parents running late and, you know, they've had a difficult time, their car's breaking down. Come in, have a cup of tea, sit down. What can we do to help you feel better about that?
Yes.
Because if you're feeling stressed and tense, whether you're a practitioner or you're a parent, it's going to affect how you can look after your child. Yeah. And so, looking after the well-being of the parents to an extent. We don't want to be, you know, completely interfering in their lives, but offering an ear or a cup of tea or a bit of time or saying, don't worry, be 10 minutes late, it's fine. No, that's okay. We've got this for you. It's really helpful. And I really want that supportive community to be central again to everything.
Definitely. I think that's the kind of overarching word, really. It's not just necessarily partnership, it's community. Because I think the two go hand in hand. Yeah,
definitely. And but there's at one point we had another group within the village coming in and having a play group in the setting. And that was fantastic as well. And we went down and joined them again and seeing the older people in the village joining in with us, and when we made the Christmas cards as well. That being aware of the wider world has benefits for the children looking out, as well as the rest of the community looking at us as well.
That's brilliant. Well, Sarah, time has caught up with us, so I'm just going to say thank you so much for taking the time to come and talk to us.
That's been an absolute pleasure, Glenn.
And don't forget, you can find out more on our podcast at our website, circletimepodcast.co.uk.